Grew up in Rockland. Parents were divorced very early. I remember my stepmom being at my second birthday. Growing up was a little bit of a challenge at times, being an only child, only grandchild. I had a lot of love and support, but my parents were just too busy fighting with each other. My mom was diabetic when she was pregnant with me, and they told her that I had a 50-50 chance of surviving because they didn't know she was diabetic. And so growing up as a little girl, hearing all this fighting and not really feeling like somebody wanted me because my grandmother raised me, it made me go, like, why was I born? Like, if I had a 50-50 chance, then why was it to be like this? Church was not a regular thing. God wasn't really discussed, but somehow, some way, obviously I said, God, why was I born? So I had a belief. I had something in me that made me believe that there was a God. I remember in 8th grade, my parents, my dad and my stepmom had a dog sitter that was involved in a youth group. So she invited me. So I went, loved it. My parents would drop me off and they'd go to the sports bar and spend their time watching football and then come back and get me and we'd go home. So I did that for, 14 to almost 16 years old, and I loved it. I was given these freedoms growing up of no curfew. And it was kind of like one family's way of showing that they loved me is kind of no boundaries. And then the other one was money. If we just buy her what she wants, then she's gonna know that we love her. But I needed that guidance and I didn't have it. So I ended up pregnant at 16, had my daughter at 17 years old, junior in high school. But not only did I do that, she had Down syndrome. Here I am in the hospital, and her grandmother held my hands and said, God chose you. He chose you to be her mom. And now you have a gift. God gave you a gift. He chose you as her mom. That's something that always stuck with me, but I didn't understand it. It didn't make sense. Fast forward, I think I was 18, had my first abortion. That was with my daughter's dad. Knew I wasn't obviously ready. He wasn't ready. We didn't learn, obviously, from the first time. And so, had that done. Shame was huge because it was just the fact of telling somebody, oh my gosh, I'm pregnant again. Huge shame I carried. But it was also, I had to do what I had to do at that time. Being 18 years old, already having a baby, I didn't want to hear about the shame again, because I had to hear a lot of shame when I got pregnant the first time, because what I left out was I had just finished being Teen Miss Rockland, and my family was very shamed because here I was, Teen Miss Rockland. Now I'm pregnant. They were big people in the community, and here I was shaming our last name. And you learn to just cope. You learn to put it out of your mind. You learn to not acknowledge it anymore and just move forward. So I moved forward and met my son's dad, and he was military. We weren't married yet, and he's just like, I'm not ready. I can't, like, we don't have a house. Like, he was living in dorms on the base. And so there came my second abortion. You just bury it. And because you don't have to feel that loss and that hurt and the feeling of going through it, being in that room. I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to marry him. So we're okay. We both can deal with this. We'll both deal with this and we'll be fine. Got married at 19. I shouldn't have gotten married. I was too young. I think because of the way I grew up, I was looking for just a family. I was looking to just feel complete and wanted, and because I struggled with, God, why was I born? For so long that I started looking for that in someone to make me feel like this is why you have value. So from 19 until, 2019, I'll say 2026 or 2016. From 19 to 2016, I married 4 different people. So very short time period. Again, looking for what I never had, just that family unit, that wanting to be married, wanting to have a family, wanting to have a husband love me. But I was looking for something that this person could never give me. And then in 2018, I met my now husband. Broke up with me 7 times in dating. And our year anniversary of dating, he said to me, we need to have God in our life. How do you feel about that? I told my boyfriend at the time, I said, please don't drink for the 3 days before we go to church, because drinking was a really bad problem at the time for him. So he comes over on Friday and he shows up drunk at my house. And I said, you need to leave. And I said, and don't think that I'm going to church with you on Sunday, because if you valued me and you valued this relationship with God so much that you wanted, then you wouldn't have showed up at my house like this. So I told him to leave. So I wake up Sunday and he goes, are you still going? And I said, I told you I'm not going. Hang up the phone, and I'm just laying there on the couch. And I'm like, and I start talking to myself, because I remember going, why do I need to go? And I just kept feeling this, you still need to go. So I get up and I go get ready, and I'm like talking to myself in the mirror, and I'm like, I am not going because I'm going for me now. I'm going because I want to go. I'm not going for him. And I start having this dialect with myself, because I'm now being nudged by what I now know as the Holy Spirit in me. I go to church and I'm kind of irritated, because I'm like, I don't really want to be here, but I know something's telling me I need to be here. And so I walk up, and of course he's sitting in the front row. And I'm like, my gosh, like, could this be any worse of a day? Like, here I was not wanting to be here, and now I'm here, and he wants to sit in the front row of the church. Sit down, and that's when God entered my life. And I felt like for the first time, I was where I needed to be. The marriages, all the mistakes, everything that I had felt, I didn't have to chase it anymore, because I felt it sitting in there. And that's when I started to really realize God was with me. That's why I was born. And I survived. That's why I had my daughter, and He gave me a blessing. And that every mistake that I went through, He was right there with me. Here I was, a new Christian in life, and blended family, which is even harder. Trying to get 2 different families to come together. Didn't have his ex-wife, didn't like me, didn't want me in their life, made it very, very difficult. made it difficult to turn the cheek every time something would happen, and just forgive and just forgive and just forgive. And so in November of 2020, we had a big fight, and my husband moved out. And my whole world started to fall apart again. I then started to think, well, there was something I could do. Like, I could do this. I can fix this, God. Like, I can just fix this. I know I can. I know I can bring my husband back. But my battle wasn't against my husband anymore. And I had to learn to let go, and truly what it was like to surrender. And I remember being in my bedroom, and I was just screaming and crying. And I was mad, and I was hurt, and I was angry, and I was all of these things. And I was talking to the Lord, and I said, you know I'm mad, and you know I'm hurt, and I'm lost, and I want to save my marriage, and I know you gave me this marriage, and I know you keep your promises. And I said, but I don't know what to do except just to let it go. But I felt like letting go was meaning I was giving up. But if anything, I learned letting go meant I was all in, because I had to give it to him. And I finally said out loud, he's yours now. And I'm not going to worry about this anymore. I'm not going to cry about it anymore. I'm going to pray for him. I'm going to pray for his protection, Lord, but I'm going to pray that he just finds you again. And I know you're going to take care of me. It was a Saturday night. I get a text message from my husband, and our pastor's in it. So it's a group chat. And he just said, I don't know how this is going to work. God's going to be the only one, I think, to be able to fix this. But I want my marriage. And I called him, and I'm like, what is this? And he goes, I don't want to lose my wife. And that's when God started making like a real difference in our life. And just opened my heart to wanting to really explain who God is and what he can do in a marriage, what he can do in a blended family, what he can do with somebody who's been married as many times as I have, my 2 abortions, my teenage pregnancy, all these things that, you can check a box, yep, that's me, yep, that's me. But God doesn't see me as those labels, those titles that I give myself, that I did give myself. He didn't look at me that way. My husband and I we went out wine tasting, and we were driving home, and I get this call from a guy that I grew up with, hadn't talked to him in a long time, very long time. And he left me a message, and he said, I see that you and your husband love the Lord as much as my wife and I have this thing called Encounter that I really think your husband probably might enjoy. Give me a call back. So he went to Encounter, and my husband came home just a different man, just so different. But then I didn't understand it because I hadn't been. I didn't know what it could do, but I did see and feel a difference in my husband. There was an encounter for women further away, and so I said, okay, I'll go. And I get there, and we start going through everything that happens in Women's Encounter, and I'm starting to feel this other stuff come up, stuff that I never thought about, the abortion. And that's when I really started surrendering so much. I loved not feeling like I was the only one. It helped me identify with so many women in a small space. and how to not carry shame anymore, how to really let God invade my life and heal me. Hope to me means change. Hope is a thought of change. Hope is you don't have to carry a suitcase full of guilt and shame. And hope is happiness. Hope is joy. That's where that freedom comes in, is I don't have to carry that shame, that hurt, that sadness. I can tell a story of gratefulness because God has healed that. I didn't do it. I didn't heal myself, because otherwise I would have been healed a long time ago. I would have done it. Who wouldn't have done it? But because you let God heal that, your life naturally changes.